Hi, friends. Susan Blackwell from the Spark File here to let you know that the doors are open for the Spark File Illume, a 9-month group creativity coaching mastermind that invites you to be the Chief Creative Officer and Chief Marketing Officer of your creativity. But what does that mean? That means in 9 months in Illume, you will clarify and advance your big creative goals and learn how to effectively share your work with the world. Now, if you're listening to this and you're an experienced creative or an accomplished professional who seeks a space where it is safe to attempt something you've never tried before, or complete a big creative project, or take your work to the next level and acquire the skills needed to share your creative work with the world, Illume might be right for you. We are calling in emotionally intelligent, high-functioning creatives who are ready to level up. You can find out more by going to thesparkfile.com/Illume, but do it now to find out if Illume is right for you and to save with early bird discounts. That's thesparkfile.com/Illume. Take a leap, take a risk. Go to thesparkfile.com/Illume and join us for Illume.
The Sparkfile podcast may contain profanity and other adult content.
Please use your discretion.
When I bump into something that inspires me, I dump it in my spark file. Could be something that I want to make or how I want to be. I pump it in my spark file. I jump into my spark file. Let's open up the spark file.
Welcome to the Spark File, where we believe that everyone is creative, but smart creative people don't go it alone.
I'm Laura Camion.
And I'm Susan Blackwell. If you're an OG listener, welcome back, Sparkler. If you're joining us for the first time, you should know that everybody's welcome here.
Whether you have put your creativity on pause during this time or you've clung to it like a lifeline, either way, welcome.
But you may be asking yourself, what exactly is a Spark File? Where do I get one? What do I file in it? These are such good questions, listener, and we have got answers.
We do. A Spark File is a place where you consistently collect all of your inspirations and your fascinations.
And here's the deal. We are makers who make all kinds of things.
If you're like us and you're making stuff all the time, or you just want to be making stuff all the time, you know that the wellspring of inspiration can run a little dry, especially now.
But don't despair. We're here for you, and we are on the lookout for fresh ideas, images, and inspiration that spark our creativity and pique our curiosity, things that inspire us to get up off our asses and make things.
Like this podcast.
Or an even deeper dive into the recesses of your brains.
Ooh. Every episode, we're going to reach into the Spark File and exchange some sparks. And from time to time, we're going to talk to some folks who spark us too.
And if you're not careful, you might just balance your noggin. So without further ado, let's open up
the Spark File.
I think we should acknowledge Laura Camion. Number one, it's Spark Day.
It's Spark Day.
And I was explaining to Nathan this morning, I was saying, this is all relevant to what we're about to discuss, but I was like, why I think Spark Day is my favorite day.
Oh, please say it.
Well,
I think I could guess.
Yes. We'll say it in just a second.
Okay.
But I don't want to, jump my own spark.
Don't jump your spark.
I want to just quickly acknowledge we're continuing our experiment, and I'm going to spark Laura this episode, and she's going to smark me back next episode.
You back. You never know.
She's going to smack me across the face and smark me back next episode.
Yes, I am.
And also just want to acknowledge there's a little work that's happening outside of Laura's house. So if you hear chainsaws, know that it's just the gardeners. It's not people that are trying to kill Laura Camion.
I'm not in danger.
They're not coming for her.
What is that movie? What is it's the
Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
So this is not the Florida Chainsaw Massacre.
That's not what is happening.
No, it definitely not.
Every time a podcaster says, I just have to acknowledge there's construction sounds in the background, I can never hear it. So let's not make a big deal about it.
Yeah, we won't make a fuss.
Listen, we're going to dive right in because we are my character one part of my brain is like, we are on a schedule.
We got to go, go.
But listen,
hurry up and relax. Hurry up and have fun.
Today.
Hurry up and relax, Suze. You've got to relax now.
It's funny because it's true, Laura Camion. Oh my God. Laura.
Yeah.
You know this because I had to give you a little bit of a heads up. I have a first for you all today. I have to say, I was so seized by the spark that I did around the brain of Jill Bolte Taylor.
Yes.
I couldn't put it down. And you've actually witnessed this in real times, Cam. I feel like I bring this up every 15 minutes. We're talking to each other. We're talking to clients. We're talking to our creativity coaching
You're not alone. If you don't bring it up, I'll bring it up.
I can't
it's so good.
Stop. I can't stop with it. So,
it's so
now,
good.
Now that.
But we should say, though, if you haven't listened to the episode from 2 weeks ago, that is titled The Brain of Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor, then you should probably listen to that one first. Is that right?
If you want, I'm going to give you a little quick update, but it's really good. So if you want to go back and listen to it, you can. If you don't, then I'll catch you up.
That's okay too. Okay.
But now that JBT, Jill Bolte Taylor, has sparked this awareness in me, I really do see the clear application of her work in so many places. I see it in my own brain. I see it in the way it functions in relationships with other people. I see it in the way that you and I interact with each other, Laura, and the way we interact with our partners, our family, our friends. I see it in my dogs. I see it in our clients. I see it in plays. I see it. I hear it in lyrics. Yeah. I see it so clearly in characters on film. I see it in characters on the TV show I'm on. I see it in the actors I work with and the crew. And essentially, I see it everywhere. And it just really has captured my imagination, which on one hand is great. And I love it. And I love being lit up by new learning. But I knew that I had to turn my attention to other sparks, but I couldn't stop myself from going back to it. And I thought, well, why the fuck not? Who says I have to move on? This is our podcast.
That's right.
We make the rules. God damn it.
Whatever's sparking you. So
that's right. So I decided if I wanted to spend more time on the spark, then I was going to do it. And in the words of Walt Whitman, swim on, little sparktopus, ever deeper into this sea of sparks.
Walt Whitman did not say that.
I swear to God, he did not say that. He had nothing to do with that. Swim on, little sparktopus, ever deeper into this sea of sparks. I think he did. I think he said that, Laura. So, Cams, are you down with this little extension to our experiment? I'm going to double spark you.
Double spark it up because I have not stopped thinking about it. As you know, I ordered the books. I ordered both. The Whole Brain Living.
Oh, good.
And her Stroke of Insight.
My Stroke of Insight. Yeah.
So I'm
good.
loving it.
I appreciate your support. I'm excited. Since the last time we recorded, I have continued to read and listen, and I filled in some gaps in my understanding. And I'll just say, Jill Bolte Taylor, if by any chance you're listening to this and you ever want to be a guest on this podcast, I still have questions. I feel like I've studied this work as in so much as she has presented it. I've studied it, and I still have questions. But maybe I'll note those in this episode. So
I will probably have more as well. And Dr. Bolte Taylor, please join us.
For the love of everything
For the
holy.
love of God, join us.
Yeah. So without further ado, I'd like to present my second spark on this topic, The Brain of Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor, Part 2, Electric Boogaloo. If you didn't want to go back and listen to that earlier episode, I'm going to give you, if you just want to keep riding this crazy train, I'm going to recap this for you. Jill Bolte Taylor, aka JBT, is a brain scientist who experienced her own stroke in 1996. She remained lucid throughout the stroke, and because she's a brain scientist, she was able to understand and share about her experience with remarkable clarity and insight, which she did in her 2008 TED Talk and via her book, My Stroke of Insight, A Brain Scientist's Personal Journey, now sitting on Laura Camion's desk. Mm-hmm. But as popular as her TED Talk was, it actually made her and TED famous. She still felt it was a miss because her aim was to get people to understand what JBT had learned during her stroke journey. We all have access to a deep reservoir of peace, which resides in the right/feeling area of our brain. And we are all interconnected on an energetic level. And as such, we want to be treating each other with reverence. What she learned was that while people began treating her with great reverence, they didn't seem to be treating each other like the magnificent, interconnected creatures that we all are. So she set about to rectify this situation by writing her second book, Whole Brain Living, The Anatomy of Choice and the Four Characters That Drive Our Life. In that book, she provides incredibly detailed research and science-based insight on the four major areas of our brains and the thoughts and feelings those areas produce. And further, she provides instructions on how to bring awareness to those thoughts and feelings to strengthen our sense of choice around which part of the brain, aka characters, she calls them characters, these different parts of our brains, which character is the most useful driver in any given situation, and how much freedom and peace can be attained via this awareness. So that's your recap.
Amazing.
What I want to do today is to go a bit deeper on the four characters as JBT defines them and see how they relate to our creativity.
Yes, yes, yes.
And before I do this, I just have to say, per the usual, I'm still scratching the surface here. JBT's work and her book, Whole Brain Living, goes so deep, crazy deep. Like just when you think she can't go deeper, deeper she goes. Dive deeper, little Sparktopus. She provides historical context. She views this work through the lens of addiction and mental illness. She views these parts of our brain when they interact with the brains of others. How her work speaks to the work that precedes her, like Carl Jung's four major archetypes of the unconscious mind, how it correlates with the hero's journey.
Amazing.
Her work is it's really, really thorough and it's very deep. And again, even though I'm going to be doing part 2 Electric Boogaloo, I'm still scratching the surface of the tip of the Sparkberg. So get that book, y'all. Learn from the master, Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor.
Amazing.
So, you ready, Cams?
I'm so ready. I'm so excited.
Listeners, are you ready? We're ready. Okay,
We're
great.
excited too.
So I want to reintroduce you all to the four characters, or introduce you for the first time maybe. And as I mentioned, JBT recommends that you take some time to name each of these characters so that you can really identify them as distinct when they start producing thoughts and feelings. So as I share these lists with you, consider that you might want to take some notes and maybe play with naming of each of these characters in your brain. I will tell you, Laura, I have done some of my naming, but I have not settled on all my naming. So,
yeah, I've been contemplating my naming, but also have not committed entirely to the names.
I have found titling things, anything that you make, is either the easiest thing in the world and it comes just like that, or it is ponderous.
I agree so wholeheartedly. I agree completely. Yeah.
So part of I'm about half done here, but maybe by the end of this podcast, I'll be done. Okay, here we go. Let's start with character 1, left brain thinking. So this is the left hemisphere of your brain. This is the thinking part of your brain. She calls this character 1. And here is a little recap. This part of our brain is past and future based. It thinks linearly and analytically. It is verbal. It thinks in language. It focuses on details. It seeks differences. It is judgmental, punctual, individual, concise, precise, and fixed. It is busy. It is all about structure and order. It is individuated and focused on me, and it's a perfectionist. So,
ooh, what a doozy.
That's where our perfectionism lives.
And when you say busy, I'm just like, and this is like, when we talk about the attention economy and the productivity economy of like push, this is character 1.
Capitalism, baby.
Capitalism is really appealing to this character. That's like, the busier I am, the better I am as a human being. and I'm better than you, frankly, because I'm also judgmental.
Yeah.
So I work
superiority,
more,
it's very hierarchical. So it understands like who's above me, who's below me. So yes.
But when we talk about people at work who like are trying to win the suffering trophy, like I worked longer hours more than anyone else. This is character one.
That seems to me like a combo platter actually of character one. And character two, who is the suffering piece. And the character one is like, did I win? Did I win? I think.
Yep,
sometimes sometimes I make these assumptions or extrapolations on her work, and I'm guessing here. So that's like a question I would have.
Let's mark that down, Dr. Bolte Taylor. What do we do with the suffering trophy? Okay, great.
Where does the suffering trophy live in our brains? So have you any thoughts about what you might name this character, Cams?
Not yet. I keep tripping myself on something you said last time, which was this part of our brain is like peanut sized. Is that this part of the brain or the whole, all of these
like
are peanut
all
sized?
All of these are it's just a little cluster of cells that are producing these different character pieces in our brain.
Okay, great. Okay. Yeah. So I kind of got stuck on this idea of like a peanut gallery. Yeah. But then I'm like, I don't think that's going to suit. That doesn't, because it applies to all of them. Yeah.
Got it.
TBD.
Also, my understanding of the anatomy, sometimes when JBT talks about the anatomy of it all, I'm just like, do, because I just can't picture it. And it just sort of washes over me. But it's possible that there could be like 4 little peanuts. You know what I mean? Like the left amygdala, the right amygdala are 2 different peanuts.
Yes, do. Yes, it just made me laugh.
It's numbers, science, history. I just go do. I
have a confession because all my life, like writing reports and whatnot in school, when I get to names, my brain will go do, and I'll come back because I just think like I'll come back and pick up that name. You know, when you're like writing a report, and numbers as well, do. And so I'm just laughing that is your description of it because I've never quite named what's happening in my brain when I skip over stuff.
A little figure of flute music plays my brain. It's just do. It just skips right over it. But amazing. So I don't think I have a good answer to your question. I think for the question I asked you, I think I am sticking with All Business Susan, aka ABS.
Yeah.
Used in a sentence. I'm not trying to be a fun buster, but ABS wants us to get this done and get to bed on time so we can get enough sleep to wake up rested and get back to work early tomorrow morning. That is so ABS.
Of course, ABS wants that.
And I just want to, if you didn't catch it before, fully admit this is the dominant piece of my brain.
Well, I think for so many of us, Suze, I think, again, to go back to like, because capitalism, because of the world we live in, this is how a lot of us attribute our success to this. So if we've built this up, it's that part that's difficult to let go of because it's like, oh God, but if I stop working this hard, working this hard is what got me to where I am. I can't like relinquish. I can't get out of this part of my brain for fear of terrible consequences. Right? Like drifting off into fun land. It all sounds great, but this part of our brain is going to be like, but you need to be rational and reasonable.
Yeah.
If you want to, keep a roof over your head.
Again, Nathan and I were talking about this morning, and we were laying in bed, and I was like, as much as I can be frustrated that this part of my brain is so strengthened that it always wants to run the show.
Yeah.
I was like, look around you. Everything you see. Well, no, not everything you see, but much of what you see is the result of the work of character one.
That is right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
So it's
not everything, but much of it. Yeah.
And also I do wonder, this is another question for Dr. Bolte Taylor. Each character, is it part of their nature to try to convince you that they are the most important and the most useful part of your brain? Because it definitely seems like character one would do that. Like, I am the person for the job. I can get us through this.
And because they work in language and they're so organized, they would run a great campaign.
That's right.
Yeah.
They would. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very convincing.
I think it really depends on how you're wired, because I have known people who are like more straight up character 2s or more dominant character 3s, etc. And they make a great case for, or aren't even making a case. They're just like, I'm JK living over here.
I don't need to
give a
convince
fuck.
you of anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. So true. And I wonder if that's like those parts of our brains don't win out as much because they don't campaign to say, let me be in charge. So I'm intrigued.
I just thought of a great name for a character 1, and this is a spark I'm not going to use. Tracy Flick.
Oh my God. Yes. Tracy Flick would be amazing.
Run a good campaign. Okay, we have to keep moving, or we're not going to be able to cover this all. But so let's move into character 2. This is left brain emotional. This is a part of our brain that developed long before we began thinking. And this part of our brain has been keeping us safe from the jump. And by jump, I mean like prehistoric times. It's also past and future based. Specifically, this character speaks up for our hurts from the past and wants to keep us from getting hurt in the future. It is fearful and cautious. It experiences grief and pain. It is stern, rigid, constricted, righteous, critical. It loves conditionally. It is doubtful and skeptical, manipulative, bullying, selfish. She sounds like a real charmer. Worrying, complaining, a victim of circumstance, helpless to getting its needs met. It might be bold, loud, and biting, or self-loathing, silent, pitiful, passive-aggressive, awkward. It's misery that loves other miserable company. And this was something that JBT said that I thought was interesting. Tried and true and independent. And I understood the independent part because it is a very individuated me, not an us part of the brain. Mm-hmm. But tried and true, I think that means it sticks to the known and sticks to what has worked in the past, potentially.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense.
It is an either or part of our brain who works in those concepts like superior, inferior, right, wrong, good, bad. So it's very sort of black and white in that way. Our character 2s tend to explode onto the scene instantly and powerfully and bring with them negative feelings in our gut, a furrow in our brow, and an aggressive tone in our voice, which leads me to extrapolate it's not the most nuanced or developed part of our mind. This is an older part of the brain that developed much, much earlier than the thinking part of our brain. Mm-hmm. I'm going on a little tangent, but JBT talks about how we are feeling beings who think because our feelings developed first. Our thinking developed subsequently. So this is a very feeling part of our brain. What were you going to say, Camis?
Well, I was going to say that I feel as though I have experienced people who have a very highly developed character too. Mm-hmm. And it may come from, spending a lot of time there and retreading the past. So as, if you keep sowing that ground and recycling it for fear for the future. And I also wonder, the way that politics is working in our country at the moment and the media, our desire for fear, like to scare ourselves with the potential for terrible things to happen in the future, we gravitate towards it. Yeah. And I wonder if that is making our character 2s, giving us more time in those places.
I think that there are whole businesses, media conglomerates that are organized around activating our character 2s.
The chainsaw's getting a little closer. I'm not in danger.
Oh, they're coming for you.
Don't be worried.
That chainsaw's activating your character 2. You've seen the movies. You know what's possible. So just to return to the words of JBT, it is this audacious character 2 who faces our deepest fears and sounds the alarm for danger in the only way it knows how. It wails, it whines, it cheats, it schemes, it self-loathes, it gets jealous, it gets angry, it feels guilt and shame, and it acts out in a million antisocial ways to get our attention. Our left and now this I thought was interesting, Laura. This I thought was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Our left and right brain emotional characters 2 and 3 both can throw a temper tantrum at any age because the cellular networks of our emotional system never mature. So that's that feeling parts of our brain. So whether it's in 2 or 3, so right brain or left brain, they can both get activated and they will not mature. So let's keep that in mind about our little character 3. She can kick up some dust too.
Is that because, again, because the past, and we're going to, like, let's say trauma that happens when we're young, and we return to that to feel the pain, to have the tantrum. I'm just really curious about that. And you don't have to say now because it might jump your spark, but I'm so curious to know if you found an answer to what does a healthy character 2 look like? Is it possible?
Yes. This part of our brain is, in the words of Gavin de Becker, our gift of fear. It is working to keep us safe. And JBT describes her character 2 with so much appreciation. She describes it as a lovely and vulnerable part of her. And she says of character 2, I have learned to value this character as my inner alarm and for the depth of my emotions, as well as my potential for growth. Yet every time this part of my brain goes negatively haywire, it means there is something going on that makes me feel unsafe deep inside. When I am willing to explore what is at the core of my reaction, there are insights available to help me better understand my own fears and weaknesses. So what she is describing is this is where our growth edge lives.
Yeah.
And this is where we gently lead the creatives we work with, Laura.
Yeah.
We are continually asking ourselves and our clients and our listeners to travel to the edge of their comfort so that they can identify good, healthy, constructive, creative risks, sparks of inspiration, and the fuel that gets things made. So in the language of JBT, we're talking about befriending our character 2 and thoughtfully, consciously journeying into that character 2 space in service of our creativity. So that's the partial answer to your question, I feel. So there is a passage in JBT's book, Whole Brain Living, that I really loved. And I feel like it's so useful for artists and human beings regarding this character 2. Our character 2 is the source of our deepest and most profound emotions. Among others, we have the capacity to feel overwhelming loneliness, become completely enveloped by grief, and love more deeply than we could ever imagine. When we hurt or hate or feel completely possessed by jealousy or rage, these emotional experiences are both powerful and delicious. I always share that I don't mind if someone is miserable as long as they remember to enjoy it. The ability of our brain to manufacture an experience of misery is a total art. We all hurt, and having the emotional capacity to experience true suffering is an amazing part of being alive. We just get into trouble when we spend too much time running that circuitry, believing that it is our truth, rather than realizing that it is simply a group of cells running a circuit. I feel pain. I am not the pain. I mean, come on.
Come on. That is amazing. That is that is literally everything.
Yeah.
Just like, don't linger there. It's not your identity. It is simply a feeling.
Don't furnish the place and set up home there.
That's right.
But it is part of the human experience and therefore part of the creative experience. And if we don't spend some time there, if we don't have some lived experience there, how do we make stuff? How do we make stuff other than just things that are like read like a greeting card? You know what I mean?
That's right. And as creatives, I'm sure you're going to get into this, but if we want to impact people, if we want to touch on those pieces of humanity that we all experience, like loneliness, things we experience but don't necessarily talk about all the time, you have to touch on their character 2. Like you're literally reaching in, and it doesn't mean that, again, that we're all as an audience collectively going into character 2 and staying there, but at least touching on it so it can trigger those feelings. That's essentially like what most artists hope to do to some degree. Like you want to touch on those deep, deep, deep feelings.
I fucking agree.
Yes.
To answer your question that you asked last episode and just restated, Laura, talking about cultivating a healthy character 2, JBT says the best way she has found to hold her character 2 in love while retaining deep inner peace is through an exercise that she calls the brain huddle. And I'll talk briefly about that in just a moment. But first, I just want to consider what we want to name this character 2. And as I said last time, I actually know I'm going to say at least 2 living humans who completely embody the majority of these qualities. And I thought about naming this character after them, but it's hard sometimes for me to feel compassion for those folks because they're so unpleasant. So I thought I might call my character 2 LSB, which could stand for Little Susan Blackwell, because it's just like that little part of ourselves. But it could also stand for Little Scared Bitey, because that's how it sometimes comes out. It gets scared and it gets bitey. Yeah. I think about how fearful and anxious I was as a kid and how fearful and anxious I sometimes still am as an adult. And what things bring my character 2, aka Little Scared Bitey, to the surface when I'm in real danger, certainly, but also when I can't figure out how to learn something. I remember from the time that I was very young, I would just if I couldn't figure out how to learn the continents, or how to learn a math thing, I would just burst into tears, and I was just a mess. But now as an adult, when I'm in an unfamiliar environment, when I'm afraid I could appear imperfect, believe it or not, have you thought at all about?
Yeah, I think about this. I'm not sure. I'm not sure about this, but I'm thinking I might call this my sensitive soul because for me, sensitive soul, I think that helps me to have compassion for it. And because it does go all the way back to my youth. My youth was spent being told I was too sensitive, as we know from previous episodes. And both, so there's a negative and positive association with it. But if I think of it collectively as my sensitive soul, I think I can have a warm appreciation for it more than, because there's other names like you. There's someone in my life who, to be honest, my mom's, most of the time, when you're talking to your therapist and they're like, where does that voice come from? I'm like, well, it's my mom's voice. And I now know, of course, my mom was scared. My mom was essentially a small child who never got to heal certain parts of herself. So I do have compassion for her as well. So I'm trying on sensitive soul. I like it. Yeah. I like it. Thank you.
Yeah. I added bitey to mine because I was sometimes it doesn't come out just I'm scared and sweet. It comes out bitey.
Yeah. So, no, that makes sense. And mine doesn't capture that quality. So I'm not sure if it's the whole enchilada or not yet, but it's what I'm playing with.
Let's play with it for now.
Okay.
All right. So next up, we've got character 3. This is right brain emotional. These are words that JBT associates with this part of the brain: creative, innovative, open, expansive, fearless, risk-taking, friendly, kind, sharing, trusting, unconditionally loving, supportive, grateful, goes with the flow, prizes equality. Speaking of her character 3, JBT writes, many of us compulsively express ourselves artistically, and few things are more beautiful than the feeling we get when we are completely lost in the flow. Some people proclaim that their creative process is an agonizingly painful experience that is, in its own weird way, uniquely delicious. Others just link up to their muse and genius pours right through. I know that when I carve stone, I love that she's a stone carver. This woman is amazing. She's amazing. I become so caught up in the flow that I feel compelled to discover and release whatever figure is stuck inside the block. How lovely it is that we humans have this capacity through our right brains to reach deep inside and express ourselves in creative ways. What a bonus it is if our creation somehow touches the heart or the right brain of another. So those were all the words of Jill Bolte Taylor. And I love, she's a, like most people listening to this, she's, in addition to being a brain scientist, is wildly creative. And this is what I was talking about with Nathan this morning. We do all this character one work. ABS did all this work to organize the recording of this podcast. You know, I did this research. I wrote up my book report. I got you the Zencaster link. We conferred about whether the sound would be okay if there were chainsaws outside your window. Like all of this, like character one, all business Susan planning, so that when we show up here, we can just relax and have fun. And that's why I think podcasting day is my favorite day.
Yes.
It's just like character 3 is off the leash. And I also have to say, I think it's true when I teach too. Do all this planning, all this preparation, so that when I get into the classroom, we can be ding dongs. We can have fun. We can, I think I probably, maybe I take it too far sometimes, but like just have fun and improv with the knowledge that the foundation of our curriculum is just spot on and solid. So
100%. Yes. That makes so much sense.
Yeah. Anyway, you get the picture. But I think this is why podcasting day is so fun, because it's just like character 3 in full effect. So JBT writes that this character 3 is her primary default setting. She wakes up in the morning as this part of herself with joy in her heart and curiosity about her day, and then consciously shifts into different characters as needed. Then once she checks out her scheduled commitments, she meanders from one thing to the next, pretty much without a plan, but problem solving as she goes. And then her character 1 pops in and keeps her on schedule. But her automatic impulse is to slip back into the freedom of the present moment character 3, unless there is some reason that she should allow a different character to take the wheel. So this is so interesting to me. As you know, I struggle with my character 1 driving. And even when I have time to rest, my character 1 keeps popping online and telling me to be productive. And the only way I can allow myself to rest has been historically to work until I'm so worn out that I have to rest. And that's when I allow myself to rest, when I'm so tired that there's no other option. So character 1 dominates my days. And you and I talk about this all the fucking time. I keep craving more what we have called unscheduled time on the calendar, or more porous time on the calendar. But I think what I'm craving is more character 3 time.
Yes.
And I'll tell you all of this because when I recently had a few days off in a row, I tried a different approach. I had a lot of conversations leading up to this to try to get my brain right about it. But then I had my character 1 make a list of all the fun things that I wanted to do. So that was like painting, working with plants, working on the house, doing crafts. And then I basically did what Jill Bolte Taylor described here. I just sort of followed charm throughout the day, and I picked what I wanted to do next. And when I was sort of like, I don't want to do this anymore, I would put that down or clean my paintbrushes and put them away, and I would flow on to the next thing. And it was lovely. My character 1 still wanted to keep me moving. And I noticed that when I stop moving, when I sit too long, when I read a book for pleasure, when I watch TV during the day, I have a really hard time quieting my character 1. But this JBT default setting that she describes is more of what I crave. I just have to figure out how to roll this way when I'm not on vacation. And I'm not sure yet how to keep this business running smoothly and character 3 it as much as I'd like to.
You know, I couldn't agree more. I think it's really interesting that she wakes up in 3. I want that. I want that.
You wake up in 1.
I wake up in 1. Or within 30 seconds, it shifts into like, wait, what time is it? What time is my first meeting? What time is my first thing? What do I need to achieve before that first thing starts? Because then we're off and running. So that kicks in immediately, and almost like I can't actually get up in the morning and relax without checking in with character one and seeing like, what's the situation? What day is it? And what do we have on the docket today?
Yeah.
But as you were talking, I was thinking about like, I've talked about it many times, but my career at Blue Man Group, surrounded by clowns. I mean, literally, these guys it is their job to be in character three. Yeah. And they live their life there. And I definitely experienced, then in contrast, the rest of us who sort of like run the show and get all of this other stuff done so that these guys can get on stage and play, it almost became like, in contrast to that, our value comes from like, what do we get done and how efficiently and how accurately, boom, boom, boom.
That's right.
Right. So you start to define yourself that way.
That's right.
But the attraction, the draw to, I could tell there were people who were like, I love being around these clowns because they are that way. I'm telling you, like 90% of the time, it is their job. It is their livelihood to be that. So in their mind, their value might be associated with like their ability to be in character three. And that's anytime from rehearsal time to meetings to actual show time. And there were those of us who were like, oh yeah, that's amazing. And I want more of that. And then you could see there was others who were like very, very resentful of that. Like, well, I don't get to live my life as a clown. It really triggered
pulled them into their character too.
Really pulled them in. And I've always been like, no, I'd rather like be around it and aspire toward it. I would choose it. I just can think of 12 people who like live in this state. Yeah.
When we have conversations with clients and they're artists, they aspire to living a more character three life, but necessity requires that they, pay their rent and they make sure they have health insurance. And sometimes people will play around with the idea of taking a job that is in, like you at Blue Man, you're in a creative space, but you're doing character one work.
That's right.
And the question we always ask people is, based on what you know about yourself, will this feel like standing next to the fire and not getting warm? Will this feel like I'm so close to what I want, but why am I not warm? And another way of looking at that, or to use the thinking of Jill Bolte Taylor, it would sort of be, I'm cast in the role of a character one. I'm standing right next to a character three.
Yeah.
And I can lightly play around in character three, but in a moment's notice, I need to return to my desk and character one it. So
Suze, I can look back and tell you entire years, if not decades, when it was more than enough for me because I was literally playing with all of them and sitting at my desk and doing it. But at night, we were creating shows with some of them, with some of the people. Like it was more of that collective kind of feeling. So I was writing, performing, creating shows, producing shows. And then those years where I wasn't, then that's like, oh no. Nope.
That was not happy making.
This isn't going to work.
It's not sustainable for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Need to get more of that play energy.
Yeah. I hear clients talk about resistance to the necessary character one work that sets the stage for what they have called the juicy stuff.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
AKA character three work. But I have to say, once I understood that my character one is absolutely essential to getting to that yummy fun of character three, it makes me appreciate character one's hard work and organization so much more.
Me too. And Suze, this is just coming to me right now, but this tragedy of artists being taught essentially that they can't be good at character 1. Like
Oh.
that they're meant to be in 3 and they can't, like, I can't figure out the business stuff, or I can't.
Now that's
do
when
this
people
stuff.
get like embezzled on, like when they're like, oh, I don't concern my, I don't, I'm like, I'm not numerate either, but you've got to pay attention to your money.
Yes. And the way, like the work of Jill Bolte Taylor, if anything, if we can take anything away from it, is that we all have within us the capacity for all 4 of these.
That's
and
right.
If you've been told differently, you are incorrect. You are.
If you've told
incorrect.
yourself differently,
That's right.
If you've told yourself that I couldn't possibly understand how to stay on schedule or how to run my finances or run my business.
Or if you've told yourself I couldn't possibly be creative. I'm just not. I'm not creative. Probably you're not listening to this podcast if that's something you think about yourself. But if you are and you've told yourself that story, it's simply not true.
It's simply not true. We all have access to all these parts of our brains, and it's just about consciously strengthening them. Mm-hmm. Talking about this creative collaboration, that's essentially what we're talking about. We're getting these different parts of our brains to collaborate with each other. Mm-hmm. JBT writes, creatively, if you are a natural musician or visual artist, you use your right brain to express yourself. When your character 3 comes out and is dominant, we become uninhibited by the paralyzing fear of our left brain judgment. It is right here in the present moment when we find a beat, add a rhythm, pick out a melody, and hook up with our left brain lyric writing self to communicate a message that is a perfect combination of story, emotion, and feeling. But when we work it, study it, and perfect it, our left brain is the master of practice, and then our right brain makes magic happen during the performance. So, I mean, that's a sort of illustration of what you're talking about. And I think about that in our work as teachers, our work as creatives, my work as an interpretive artist. When I go, I learn my lines. I know how to hit my mark.
It's that spark you did about preparation. That left brain is like prepare, and
that's
then go have fun.
And then let it rip. But even when you're letting it rip on camera, that's a really good example of you have to have your character 1 still has to hit marks.
Yes.
And sometimes those marks are so subtle. It's literally like, can you shift your weight to the right stop? Like it's so, and you have to then let your character 3 come out and play while your character 1 is holding you to that mark.
Yeah. And also like how, like when you do it, that's part of why, how exhilarating it is, I think. I don't know what Dr. Bolte Taylor will say about this, but to me, that multiple parts of the brain working together and lighting up leads to an incredible, like euphoric feeling to me when you do things that require them to work together.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
I mean, that's like Anthony Veneziale showing those brain scans of people where their whole brain is lit up.
Yes.
That is a good time, Charlie.
Yeah.
Whole brain collaboration. When I read JBT's words and her work, it really does help me appreciate how all the parts of my brain need to pull their weight when it comes to the creative process. And just to restate, character 1, left brain thinking, keeps us organized, meets deadlines, schedules rehearsals, makes sure we're off book. Character fills out grant applications. Character 2, left brain feeling, tells us what scares us. It serves as our growth edge. It fleshes out the full range of emotions and the human experience. Character 3, right brain feeling, is creative, curious, playful, seeks adrenaline and adventure, which leads me to character 4, right brain thinking. A little bit about character 4. This part of the brain lives in the present. She is nonverbal. She thinks in pictures. I think that's super important. She thinks in images. She is compassionate, flexible, resilient, open to possibilities, available, looks at the big picture and seeks similarities. So instead of the left brain seeking differences, this part of the brain is seeking similarities. She is experiential, lost in the flowing fluidity of time, body-based, kinesthetic. Jill Bolte Taylor says character 4 is always running just below the radar of the noise that is made by the other characters. And Jill says this is her authentic self that is all knowing, all loving, and connected to all that is. I think, this is me talking now, I think when we are experiencing the very best art, either as the artist or as the consumer, when an audience is breathing together, when their hearts are beating together, when we transcend time during a great performance and we look down at the lights come up at intermission and we say, oh my God, it's 3 hours later. That's when art has the capacity to bring character 4 to the surface. So JBT has talked about how the stroke knocked out her characters 1 and 2. And when that happened, how the consciousness of her character 4 was one of uncompromised peacefulness and euphoria. And she said she returns to that state many times every day. And when her character 4 is in effect, she is in the present moment. Her senses perk up. She gets an expansive feeling in her chest, and the boundaries of her body slip out beyond her awareness, and the essence of her being swells in a timelessness of intense grace and contentment. Her speaking voice drops into a lower register, and she enunciates clearly. Those are her words. Tell me that doesn't sound like the description of a great performer, like a great stage actor.
Amazing.
Or a great, when I think about like, I'll say her name, Meryl Streep. When I've watched Meryl Streep work, both on screen, but also in person, I'm like, oh, you're going into a different space. And I've described it as flow. I've described it as, I'm trying to find words for it, sort of like when Michael Jordan talks about how when he's in flow, things go into slow. It's like everybody else is in slow motion and he is just in real time, and his brain is working faster, or he's moving faster than other people. I observe that in Meryl Streep as well. And I just think, oh, they're living, I think they're whole brain living actually, with a big healthy dose of this character 4 flowing peace. Of her character 4, JBT writes, consider the moments in your life when you have felt your heart expand or open. And I was like, I do know that feeling. I feel it in my chest. There's a Macklemore song where he talks about feeling a bubble in his chest. And I'm like, oh, I know that feeling. And that is our character 4 rising to the surface. She goes on to say, this portion of my brain knows that we are perfect, whole, and beautiful, regardless of what is spiraling around in me in this world or what circumstance I find myself in. And she writes a bit about how to consciously shift to get into your character 4. And this is what she says. With practice, I shift my consciousness out of my normal focus, pushing the constant noise of the world into the background, and bring my attention to that which has no name. When I focus on my breath, I shift out of the past or the future. Once in the present moment, I connect with my sense of gratitude and allow my consciousness to devolve into the babble of the babbling brook and empathetically experience the laughter, tears, and fears of others. I let myself expand, weaving my energy between the blades of wheat in that field over there, and I am in the movement of the grass and trees. This part of me is never far away as I vibrate in the hum of the hummingbirds and coo at the trail of a shooting star. When she uses these words, Laura, her description of character 4, it's poetry. Her words and the natural interconnectedness she is describing remind me of a Rumi poem that we read each week at our creativity lab to get into the flow of our creative work. This poem was introduced to me by my writing teacher, Linda Berry. And Linda Berry uses it to ritualize the beginning of the writing process, which I think is essentially to tell the whole brain, and especially character 4, we're going on a creative journey for the time being. And this is the poem. Tell me if this isn't the most character 4 thing you have ever heard. You are sitting here with us, but you are also out walking in a field at dawn. You are yourself the animal we hunt when you come with us on the hunt. You are in your body, like a plant is solid in the ground, yet you are wind. You are the diver's clothes lying empty on the beach. You are the fish. In the ocean are many bright strands and many dark strands, like veins that are seen when a wing is lifted up. Your hidden self is blood in those veins that are lute strings that make ocean music, not the sad edge of surf, but the sound of no shore. Thank you, Rumi. Is that the most character for?
Yes.
And when we read it at the top of our creativity lab, where people are preparing to immerse themselves into that character 3, we're also signaling to them, not only is it time to get creative, it is time to dip into that character 4 space. And it's like a magic spell, and it brings me into that interconnected space.
100%. It's inviting character 4. It's essentially saying to our brains, I invite you, let's work together. Let's get into this space. Let's connect with all that is.
Yeah. It occurs to me that I still don't have a name for my character 3, just jumping back. I'm working with the name POTUS, because POTUS is my dog, and POTUS has sort of embodies this energy that is so playful, that is so curious, that is so present moment. I don't think POTUS thinks in language. I think POTUS thinks in images, and also is an adrenaline seeker. Like I'm sort of playing with the name of POTUS. I'm not sure yet. I don't know if I ever said this on the podcast. I might have, but a couple summers back, I was doing an encores at City Center. And so I hadn't performed live in a musical in a while. And the first night of the performance, when it was showtime, I was sitting on stage and I was getting ready to stand up and sing this big number. And I started to feel myself slip into the adrenaline of character 3, which is great, but I could also feel myself maybe taking a turn into character 2, fear. And I imagined POTUS on my lap. And I was like, I don't think if POTUS was here, I don't think he'd be scared.
Aww,
I'm going to embody that energy, just playful. And it helped me kind of just pull it back into character 3 world. So I'm playing around with POTUS, and character 4, I'm not sure. Rumi, because you could spell it both ways. Rumi, like the poet, but also Rumi because it's so expansive. We're considering Rumi, but we're welcome to any other input that you all may have. So let's get into some what do we make of it. If you're a writer or an actor, or you're seeking some character inspiration or clarity, I encourage you to try viewing your characters or their behaviors in certain situations through the lens of the 4 characters. For instance, if you have a character whose primary circuitry is that character 2, left brain emotional, and they might love verbally sparring with or bullying others, purposefully trying to make others feel bad. They might get upset about politics or not feel safe around people who are different from them. So that's just one example. And we also, because the magic of so many art forms is creating change so that the viewer, whether that's the reader, the watcher, the listener, we love to observe change. Oh my gosh, we love it in all our art forms. So how do the characters change? Like, does it change? Do you go from, they started out as a tight-laced character 1, and then through interacting with character 3, they not only got to 3, but they learned a lesson that took them all the way to character 4. That's every movie poster or every trailer you've ever seen where there's some tight-laced guy in a suit with a necktie, and there's some crazy, like suddenly seeking Susan who's got their tie like wrapped around their hand, and they're like, come on, I'm going to take you to the wild side. Like, that's a character 1 being changed by a character 3.
That's right. And then you also have like the trope of sort of the buffoonish guy who like can't get his life together because he's like always being a clown and goofing off.
My idiot brother. Yes,
that's
absolutely.
right. And he needs to be pulled into character 1 to get his life together. to show that he can be responsible, keep a job, and settle down.
But maybe in that interaction, everyone is changed for the better and arrives in a character 4 space.
Always.
Your peanut butter is in my chocolate. My chocolate is in your peanut butter. 2 great tastes that taste great together.
Mm-hmm.
What do we make of this regarding collaboration and specifically conflict in the midst of collaboration? According to JBT, any conflict between 2 character 2s will never be resolved. She actually repeats it in the book, so I'm going to repeat it here. Any conflict between 2 character 2s will never be resolved.
Okay. I'm sorry to take it again back into politics, but when we live in a world where the media, our politicians, people are appealing to our character 2s in different ways, whether you're afraid of socialism or you're afraid of conservatism, if we're afraid and we're living in character 2, we are not going to come together
will
and
never be resolved.
This.
Yep.
Whoa. Okay.
So whether it's in the global or the national political arena, or if it's in a rehearsal room, if you are feeling disagreeable and ready to go on the attack, pay attention to which character the other person is starting out as. What circuitry are they running? Jill says, in order for any conflict between 2 character 2s to be resolved and for any healing or agreement to happen, one of the parties must be willing to shift out of their character 2.
Wow.
She says, it is really fun to watch this dynamic in action when people are in dispute. Once you gain an eye for it and learn to manage your own character 2 reactivity, your communication with others will surely become more agreeable.
Wow.
I want to note that, and this is just very day-to-day tactical. It's worth noting that your character 2 can splash to the surface when you are hungry, tired, when your blood sugar drops. So if you're headed into the studio or rehearsal or a big writing session or a wood carving session, or Laura, if we're ideating about, I think we know this about ourselves, but we're going to do some big thought work about what we want the next 6 months of curriculum to look like. We need to come to that rested, having eaten healthy, including having some light snacks available to sustain and fuel us.
I'm so proud to say and just acknowledge to you, like, I feel like we're conscious of this.
Yes.
We're very considerate. If one of us is like, hey, I'm like, I just felt my blood sugar drop. I need to take a break and get a snack or drink some water, etc. Like there is never any judgment. We snap immediately into, yes, let us take care of ourselves so that we
even see it
here.
In each other.
Yeah.
And you'll say to me, I'll say, I just lost the thread. You said it last week and you were like, I saw it happen.
Yeah.
And there are times when we may have mentioned this on the podcast before. I'll come into a scheduled meeting that we have with each other and I'll say, I feel irritable and I can tell it's looking for something to attach to.
Yeah.
And basically to call myself out.
Yeah.
And also, if I'm a dick, that you can be like, don't splash it this way. You know what I mean?
Well, I love that level of consciousness, Suze. Not many people that I know have it to the degree that you have. Just to articulate that, my irritability is looking for something. That awareness, like a lot of people don't realize maybe until after they've snapped at someone. They're like, oh, actually, it wasn't that person at all. It started before that. So take that tip. It will change your life if you're able to get in front of it and say, my irritability is seeking, and put your family members or friends on warning. That's what's happening right now. It can change everything.
Well, now, thanks to the work of JBT, we have this additional language and we can say, ooh, my character 2 is on the hunt, or my character 2 has been kicked up.
Yeah.
Either I woke up like this and I'm not sure why. I don't know what I ate last night or what I was dreaming about, but my character 2 is on the hunt. We can say that now and even take a pause and just let the other pieces of our brain, our character 1s, our character 3s and 4s, appreciate and tend to that part of our brain, not just sort of castigate it or punish ourselves, double arrow, for being in that space, but use the other parts of our brain to collaborate to help lift us on up out of that circuitry. Thank it. acknowledge it, and then make a different choice. Here's another what do we make of it? Great acting. JBT says, when it comes to assessing how safe we are in the presence of another person, our right brain character 3 is a well-honed truth detector. It reads body language, matches it with facial expression, and then interprets the emotional cues of inflection of voice and vocal intonation. When all those pieces of the puzzle fit together appropriately, we interpret that behavior as truth. When the pieces do not fit together as they should, for example, if a person's body stance does not communicate openness when they are professing their love, we question the overall integrity of what they are saying. Some people, for whatever reason, have mastered the fine art of deception, and they do this by consciously manipulating how they are perceived. They fly under other people's right brain radar. It is possible for us to train ourselves to do this, but to be a really good liar, and I'll add actor, our left brain has to recruit our right brain to help pull off the trickery. I'm going to say that again. Our left brain has to recruit our right brain to help pull off the trickery. Our right brain would be responsible for holding our body just right and not giving the deception away with our mouth or eyes while manifesting appropriate vocal cues. That's Jill Bolte Taylor. Now I say, if you're interested in being a great actor, especially a great on-camera actor, get into your character 3 and working in collaboration with the rest of your characters. It's so funny the way that she's talking about brain health and brain balance, but I'm like, this is the pathway to being a great actor.
Yes.
Speaking from experience, you need character 1 to show up off book, on point, ready to hit your marks, as I said earlier. You must access your character 2 in order to bring the full depth of human emotion to the work. And you must strengthen your character 3 so that you can appear authentic and unobserved. So I think there's stuff in here that is the key to great acting.
I would say great acting. I would also say great writing. I think like you need to know, I mean, because that what you just described is, working with a character who, the idea that you want to be believable because you mean what you say. And then there's the character that you are writing who is not telling the truth. And and so understanding those things that would indicate whether or not they are telling the truth. I just think, yes is what I'm saying. It goes deep. And this understanding, I think, helps us at every level of our creativity.
I do too.
Phenomenal, Suze. I love this.
So I just want to share a few more. What do we makes of it? What do we makes of it? Some of the most profound creativity rises out of the deepest wounds we have experienced. That might look like people who have experienced or witnessed injustice or trauma and then worked and collaborated and organized to create change. Or people who have been so moved by, I just think of some of our clients who have been so moved by the impact of arts and what the arts have brought to their lives that they are working to create advancements around art education. Or it could look like creatives who write their pain into their comedy or novels or TV shows or paint it onto canvases or incorporate it into their performance art. It's the old, if you have to live it, you might as well get to make something out of it. Your character 2 can collaborate with your other characters. Character 2, again, tells us where our growth edge is. It provides that visceral feeling to tell us that there's potential creative risk afoot. It provides us with raw source material and the fuel to get the project made. And then character 2 can pass that spark to character 3, who can utilize their creativity to make something out of it. And character 1 can project manage the fuck out of all of it. So to answer your earlier question in a different way, I think a healthy character 2 is our intrepid feeler who identifies the cave we fear to enter, which holds the creative treasure that we seek.
Yes.
And one more, what do we make of it? Jill Bolte Taylor tells the story about how she became a river guide after graduating from college. Through the people that she learned from and the life that she lived that summer, she says she grew up and met the best part of herself, the part of her that she wanted to become her character 4. When she returned home, her mother recognized that she was now a different woman, and her mother never held her back to her smaller self. I read that and I realized in my life, I have sometimes gotten scared. character 2,
Yes.
that if I grow up into a more expansive version of myself, if I grow into my character 4, I will be too much for people. My character 2 fears rejection, so I revert back into smaller versions of myself that I guess people might feel more comfortable with. But I'm putting myself on notice when I see myself or people whom I support potentially playing small. I am committing to remember that under the chatter of all these characters, there already exists a character 4 that is connected to you, Laura. It's connected to all of you listeners, and beyond that, to the entire universe. I am reminded by Jill Bolte Taylor's work that in this moment, we are perfect, we are whole, we are beautiful, and we are expansive beyond measure.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
in conclusion, again, I highly recommend this book. As I mentioned in part 1 of this Spark, there's an exercise detailed in her book called the Brain Huddle that she uses to strengthen this collaboration between the 4 parts of her brain and to consciously decide which part of her brain she will call on at the appropriate time to respond. It is a game-changing exercise, so check out Whole Brain Living, The Anatomy of Choice, and the 4 Characters That Drive Our Life by the great Jill Bolte Taylor.
Thank you, Jill Bolte Taylor.
Thanks,
Thank you,
JBT.
Susan, for bringing it all to our attention and going on another deep dive of it. I love this stuff so much.
I'll say again, our little Sparktopus dove ever deeper, and yet there's so much that I have not touched in this book. It's just life-changing.
Yes, I agree. I completely agree. Oh, and that left brain of mine was like, oh, what if I had learned this when I was 25? What if I had learned this when I was 30? Because I really do believe it's life-changing. But I'm learning it now.
We get to learn it now.
And that's a gift.
It is a gift.
You. Oh.
All right. My character 1's telling me we've got to wrap this up. We've got to go.
Mm-hmm.
We've got other Sparktopuses to fry.
There's
oh my God,
ideas.
on the menu tonight, deep fried Sparktopus. Oh God, no.
God, no.
Oh.
No.
Swim
No
deeper
calamari.
into this fryer, Sparktopus. I guess that's it. What a note to end on. This episode of the Spark File was made on the lands of the Lenape and Seminole people. And as always, we hope that this put another bunch of sparks in your deep spark fryer. If there's a spark you'd like us to explore, or if you've taken a spark and fanned it into a creative flame and you'd like to share that, email us at thesparkfile@gmail.com or submit it through our website, thesparkfile.com.
We'll even happily take your feedback, but you know the price of admission. First, you need to share a creative risk that you've taken recently.
You can follow us on social at The Spark File, and be sure to subscribe, rate, and 5-star review this podcast. It really does help other people to find us. If you like this podcast, we hope you'll share it with people that you love. And if you didn't like it, we still love you.
And your character too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. If something tickles your fancy and gets your creative juices flowing, we're writing you a forever permission slip to make that thing that's been knocking at your door. It's your turn to take a spark and fan it into a flame.
You got to take it and make it. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, little Sparktopuses.
When I bump into something that inspires me, I dump it in my spark file. Could be something that I want to make or how I want to be. I pump it in my spark file. I jump into my spark file. Let's open up the spark file.
Hi, friends. Susan Blackwell from the Spark File here to let you know that the doors are open for the Spark File Illume, a 9-month group creativity coaching mastermind that invites you to be the Chief Creative Officer and Chief Marketing Officer of your creativity. But what does that mean? That means in 9 months in Illume, you will clarify and advance your big creative goals and learn how to effectively share your work with the world. Now, if you're listening to this and you're an experienced creative or an accomplished professional who seeks a space where it is safe to attempt something you've never tried before, or complete a big creative project, or take your work to the next level and acquire the skills needed to share your creative work with the world, Illume might be right for you. We are calling in emotionally intelligent, high-functioning creatives who are ready to level up. You can find out more by going to thesparkfile.com/Illume, but do it now to find out if Illume is right for you and to save with early bird discounts. That's thesparkfile.com/Illume. Take a leap, take a risk. Go to thesparkfile.com/Illume and join us for Illume.